Hey guys, so carrying on with the decks you should expect to be seeing at Dallas, we're going to be talking about Night March, because it's expanded. Night March is a thing and expanded. So this will be my list of Night March, and just like the last video, this is my preferred list. You can change it to whatever you want, but yeah, so we're going to be talking about Night March. So firstly, let's go over the Night Marches. So if you don't know what Night March is, essentially it's based around three Pokemon, being Pumpkaboo, Joltik and Lampent. And all of them have the attack Night March. Night March says that this attack does 20 damage for each other Pokemon in your discard pile with the Night March attack. So essentially what this deck does is it sends a load of copies of Pumpkaboo, Joltik and Lampent into your discard pile to stack up damage to the point where you're basically one-shotting anything, and then you just take 6 prizes really quickly due to KO after KO. Keep in mind that Lampent is only in this deck to be sent to the discard pile, and we don't play the basic because it's really bad and really slow. There are plenty of ways to get them into the discard pile as well, through all of our trainers and the new inclusion being Zoroark GX. And with Zoroark being in the deck, this list is really consistent and I love it. And we're playing 4 copies of each Night Marcher, being 4 Pumpkaboo, 4 Joltik and 4 Lampent. So next we play 2 copies of Zorua from Black and White base. We play this one over the other copies of Zorua because it can do lunge for 30 for a DCE. This deck only plays 4 DCE and 30 is enough to KO a Joltik. Yeah, it's on a coin flip, but at the end of the day, if you're making Night March run out of attackers, you basically win. So yeah, that's the reason why we're playing this Zorua over the others. So next we play 2 copies of Zoroark GX. Now, this is the reason that this deck's gone a lot stronger recently, just because of its ability trade. It allows you to discard a card and draw 2. You can discard the Night Marchers so they're in the discard pile to do more damage, and you're drawing cards. So if you get clogged with Lampents in your hand, you can just discard them through trade to draw 2, and then those 2 draws could probably get you into an Ultra Ball or a Sycamore to discard the others. And it is just so good in this deck, it is unbelievable. It can also attack with Righteous Beating. It does 20 damage for each Pokemon you have in play, so that can stack up to 120, and then you can use it to try and 2-shot stuff. But at the end of the day, Night March is all about one-shotting stuff, so you're not going to be using this to attack a lot of the time, but there are going to be cases where this attack would be better in that situation. And yeah, that's why we play this Zoroark GX. So next we're going to be playing 1 copy of Marshadow GX. Now, Marshadow's in this deck just for its ability Shadow Hunt. It allows it to copy attacks of basic Pokemon in your discard pile, but you still need the correct energy to do the attack. And we use Marshadow to copy Joltik, so then it can do Night March. And this is only in the deck just so you can one-shot Pokemon with 250 HP, because with all 12 Night Marches in the discard pile, you'll be dealing 240, and then with a Choice Band, you'll be going up to 270, which can one-shot basically anything in the game. And it's a way to get around Wailords as well, since they normally aim to not be one-shotted, but Marshadow allows it to be one-shotted. And yeah, so that's the reason why we play Marshadow. So next we'll be playing 3 copies of Shaymin EX, and we're literally just playing this Shaymin for its ability Setup. And Setup says when you play it from your hand onto your bench, you may draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. So when playing Night March, you're going to find yourself on a low hand size due to you're constantly digging for ways to discard your Night Marches. And Shaymin allows us to carry that on for a longer period of time. And it attacks Sky Return for a DCE, does 30 damage, and it goes back to your hand with everything attached to it. So you can use this to get a cheeky KO on a Joltik while going back into your hand. So then you can use it the following turn, which is pretty neat. And yeah, that's why we're playing Shaman EX. So finally, for Pokemon, we're playing one copy of Tapu Lele GX. And we're playing this for the ability Wonder Tag, where if you place it from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for a supporter card. This plays a really similar role to Shaman in the way that it allows us to prolong our turns for constantly digging, because you can use it to grab a Professor's Sycamore mid-turn to then discard your hand, draw 7, hopefully discarding more Night Marches. But it can be used to grab your other one-of supporters, so like a Hex Maniac if they have an Aegislash or some of similar in the active. You can use it turn 1 to grab a Getsis if it's needed, and it's just universal and it is great. Its attack energy drive does come into play sometimes, where it does 20 damage for each energy attached to both active. It's kind of good against Yveltal, since they're going to be stacking energies on, but apart from that, you're literally going to be using this for Wonder Tag. So starting off our items, we play 4 copies of Battle Compressor, and the Battle Compressor allows us to discard up to 3 cards from our deck. So this is going to be your main way to discard all your Night Marches, and when you are discarding for Night Marches, you want to aim to discard 2 Night Marches and a supporter, because you can get the supporter back with a VS Seeker. So how I generally play is with the first Battle Compressor, you discard 2 Lampents and a Sycamore. So then mid-turn, after drawing quite a few with Shaman, you can go VS Seeker Sycamore and then carry on that way. You can later on start discarding your Pumpkin Boost, so you don't have to rely on Dimension Valley to attack. But whilst you're discarding the Pumpkin Boost, you want to discard at least 1 Joltik, so then you can attack with Marshadow. Yeah, so this card's really important in this deck because it allows us to keep discarding throughout the game, and even if we get hit by Karen, if you haven't been playing Battle Compressor too often, you can just use them again to keep discarding, which is really nice. So for our A spec of choice, we'll be playing 1 copy of Computer Search. And what Computer Search does is it allows us to discard 2 cards from our hand, search the deck for a card. You can use Computer Search to start discarding your Night Marches, and then search for a Sycamore, so then you can discard more Night Marches and then draw back. Or you can use it to search your DCE if you need to attack. It can search your one-of supporters, your Choice Band, your Floatstone. Like, some decks do play Dowsing Machine, which is discard 2, add a trainer from discard to hand. But I prefer Computer Search, since we want to be aiming for consistency over long-term resources, since we want to win as soon as possible, and Computer Search allows us to push for that mentality whilst playing. So I personally think this is better in the deck over Dowsing Machine, but again, you can play either one. It doesn't really matter too much, but I prefer Computer Search. So next we play 1 copy of Field Blower, and Field Blower allows us to get rid of any combination of 2 tools or stadiums. We only played a 1 because we can get them back with our Puzzler Times. And we generally use this to get Floatstones off Garbodors, and that's literally about it, because we want our abilities intact, so we can Shaman and Lele and Zoroark, and Marshadow to KO the big stuff. So next we play 4 copies of Puzzler Time. Now, we're using Puzzler Time mainly for its second effect, to discard 2, add 2 cards from discard. And this is used so we can prolong games if we need to, because not all of our games are going to go smoothly and we win quickly. Because decks like Seismitoad Zoroark aim to discard energies, and if we're not under item lock, which we get out with Pokemon Ranger, We can play double puzzle to get back the energies they've discarded, or if we've run out of attackers, we just puzzle the time for a Joltik and a DCE. It can get back battle compressors if we're being Karened. Like, it is so good in this deck, it's unbelievable. So next we play one copy of Special Charge, and Special Charge allows us to shuffle 2 special energies from discard pile back into our deck. So this is really just used to get back our DCEs, and then we draw back into them with Shaman. Like, yeah, that's really all it's there for. It can be used when we have to take 6 individual prizes, because those games will naturally be longer, but apart from that, that's really all we're playing it for. So next we play 3 copies of Train's Mail, and Train's Mail allows us to look up the top 4 cards of our deck, and we may reveal a trainer we find there, and then put into our hand. The others are shuffled back into deck. So this is literally just played for added consistency to the deck. You can mess around with copies between 2 and 4, but I find 3 to be a pretty safe number. So again, it's up to you how many you play, but I'd rather play 3 just so you see it. It can be used to grab anything that can be used to discard Night Marches, so our Ultra Balls, our Battle Compressors, and our Computer Search, and it's really useful in this deck for that purpose. So next we play 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball allows us to discard 2 cards and search our deck for a Pokemon. So we use this to discard 2 Night Marches to then search for a Shaman 9 times out of 10. So then we draw more cards whilst putting damage into our discard pile. We can use it to search a Night Marcher to attack with as well, which will most likely be a Joltik, but then if you or your opponent has a Dimension Valley set up, then you would probably search a Pumpkaboo, since it has more HP than a Joltik, and it can then still attack for a DCE. But 9 times out of 10, you're just going to use it to search a Shaman to draw. And that's pretty much it for Ultra Ball. So finally for items, we play 4 copies of VS Seeker. And VS Seeker allows us to put a supporter in our discard pile into our hand. So we literally use this to reuse supporters, since we got a load of one-offs, which we can dump with the Battle Compressor to then get back with the VS Seeker. And that's literally it. You can use it to get a Sycamore to then discard dead Night Marches in hand, like Lampants, or if you need to ability lock after you've done all your trades, then you VS Seeker for your Hex. But apart from that, that's literally all the reason why it's in it. So for our stadium of choice, we're playing 2 copies of Dimension Valley. So what Dimension Valley does is allows each Psychic Pokemon's attacks in play cost a colorless less. So this allows Pumpkaboo to attack for a double colorless instead of 3 colorless, which is really good for this deck since we're only playing 4 double colorless energies. The reason we're only playing 2 is because Pumpkaboo's not a main attacker, because Joltik is, because it naturally uses a double colorless to attack. So yeah, that's why we're playing Dimension Valley. So starting off our supporters, we play 1 copy of Getsis. And Getsis allows you to look at your opponent's hand and shuffle all item cards you find there back into their deck, and then you draw cards equal to the amount of items you shuffle back. So you either want to play this or Hexmaniac turn 1 as your main disruption. So then over the course of the game you can use VS Seekers to get it back. If you know that their deck's really ability reliant, then just go in for the Hex. But if not, then 9 times out of 10 you're just going for the Getsis to then make them at a disadvantage before they've even began, which is nuts. And plus it allows you to draw, so you can draw into your Battle Compressors and stuff, which is pretty neat. Next we play 1 copy of Guzma, and Guzma allows you to switch your opponent's active with one of their bench, and then you switch your active with one of your bench. So this is going to be played to snipe off the weak EXs and GXs that are being played in Expanded, being the Shaman EXs and the Tapu Leles. Since we're a one-shotting deck that wants to end the game quickly, we want to bring them up into the active, so then we throw up a Night Marcher with a DCE to KO. And this is also played for when we want to get stuff out of the active that we don't want in, being our Shamans and our Lele's, and sometimes our Zoroarks as well, dependent on the situation, because if we can KO a EX or a GX with a one prize attacker being a Night Marcher, then you'd rather do that than try and two-shot Summit. So next we play one copy of Hex Maniac, and Hex Maniac turns off abilities for both players until the start of your next turn. So you want to play this likely turn 1, so then you can ability lock them throughout the game. And you'd want to play this after you've done all your trades and your Shamans and stuff, because if you play this before then you can't set up or trade, which is pretty bad. But if you're playing against a deck that's ability reliant, like Greninja, which is a bad matchup for this deck since they just snipe off bench, then you just play Hex Maniac constantly, and by the time they've had a turn of abilities, you're too far ahead for them to catch up, and it's just really good. So next we play one copy of Lysander. Now Lysander switches one of your opponent's active with one of their bench. So this plays a similar role, there we go, I can talk, to Guzma, but it doesn't switch us, which can sometimes help, because we've got a Night Marcher in the active with nothing set up on the bench, and we want to snipe off this weak EX or GX, then we'd rather play the Lysander over the Guzma, so then we just bring it up, KO it, and take 2 prizes. So next we play one copy of N. N allows each player to shuffle their hand into their deck, and then both players draw cards for the amount of prize cards they have remaining. So this deck doesn't really rely on N for draw power. Since we're aiming to end the game quickly, we're going to have pretty low prize count throughout the game, so N will actually hurt us more. But if we're losing, and we still are on a higher prize card count than our opponent, then we'll gladly N to put them to a lower hand size than us, so then we can gain more cards and set up quicker. So next we play one copy of Pokemon Ranger. Pokemon Ranger turns off any effects that are on any Pokemon or any player. So we use this to get around Seismitoad's Quaking Punch. Since Seismitoad is becoming a really big deck again, we want to start teching in the Pokemon Rangers again. And with Pokemon Ranger, essentially it turns off the item lock since it's an effect on the player, and then you go ahead and play out as many items as you can during your turn, and then find a way to get this Ranger back into your hand using VS Seekers or Puzzle of Times, and then we just KO the Seismitoad on that turn, since we've just dumped like half of our deck. And then if it ever arises again, then the Ranger's either going to be in our hand or in our deck if they end us or not. And then if it's in either of those two places, then we're pretty good, since we just draw back into it if it's in our deck. So next we play 2 copies of Professor Sycamore. This allows us to discard a hand and draw 7 cards. So we mainly use this to discard all of our dead Night Marchers in hand, which will most likely be Lampins and Punkaboos, and then draw 7 new cards to then keep discarding more from our deck. And yeah, so that's really the only reason why this is here. This used to be a free of it in the deck, but I cut it to try and throw in some more text like the Pokemon Ranger, and it's perfectly fine at 2, to be honest. Like, I've had no problems with it at 2 since we just get it back with VS Seekers and Puzzles, and then we can search for it through Lele. So lastly, for supporters, we play one copy of Teammates. And Teammates says, if we had a Pokemon KO'd during our opponent's last turn, we search our deck for 2 cards and add them into our hand. So with all of our main attackers being pretty low HP, with Joltik having 30 and Marshadow having 150, 9 times out of 10 we're going to get KO'd the following turn, and then because of that, Teammates will be live and we search for 2 cards. It can be 2 DCEs, a DC and a Choice Band, or whatever you need at the time, and it's just in this deck, it is brilliant. So starting off our Pokemon tools, we play one copy of Choice Band, and Choice Band allows us to deal 30 extra damage to EXs and GXs. We only played a one because deck space is really tight. I'd love to play a second one, but I don't really know what to cut for a second one. Again, like, you can take out whatever you want for the second one, but Choice Band is really in here, so we can push for that extra damage with our Marshadow to go over the 250. We can hit 250 with a normal Night Marcher, but that means putting 11 in the discard pile, and then that'll be KO'd the following turn along with the Choice Band. So yeah, we really just want to put this on the Marshadow, but it can be good on the one prizes, being the Joltix and the Pumpkaboos. And lastly for tools, we play one copy of Floatstone. So we played a one copy of Floatstone just to get some out of the active if it was ever stuck there. So if they just grabbed up a Lele or our Shaman and passed, we just have to dig for our Floatstone, attach it, and then go back into a Night Marcher to KO. Like, there's nothing really special about this in this deck in particular, but it's pretty handy nonetheless. And for our energy count, we literally just play 4 double colorless energy, because our attacks only require 2 colorless, and with all the dumping we're doing with the battle compressors and ultra balls and whatnot, we can easily get into them, and then if they ever go into the discard pile, we can get them back with Puzzle of Times and Special Charge. And that concludes our deck profile for Night March. So this deck is like really strong, and it has been ever since Lysander's trump card got banned, and it just dominates the expanded format over and over again. Seismitoad Zoroark is becoming big again, so I'm not entirely sure now if this is going to be the top deck in expanded, but I guess we can only see when Dallas comes up. But I still think this is a pretty strong pick going into it, just because of your sheer damage output and that you can KO 3 Toads per game, or 3 Zoroarks per game. Yeah, so don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be posting another deck profile relatively soon, most likely on Friday, the day before the event. And yeah, so I'll see you all then.